if you want a provider, i.e. somebody to just give you things, I think they call them sugar daddies, right?
Yeah.
Right? But like there's no disputing that it's not a love thing, it's a business transaction. We're not equal, we're not the same, because men don't have a biological clock like women. It's a fact. I'm not saying you don't like it or hate it, it's a fact.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And because of that, you have a different set of criteria to us. Right? A different, and what I'm saying, even if you think you want to act like a man, right? You can drink like a man, you can bitch like a man, drink like a man, you ain't a man. Because you are still going to have that biological clock, I'm not.
Welcome to another episode of Dads Divulge. We've got a very special guest with us today. You know, this guy is not just my uncle, but someone that, other than my dad, has played a major role in my life. And, you know, it's not because we speak on the phone every day. It's because of the example that he sets as a man, as a dad, as a husband. He's an investment banker, father of 3, happily married for 31 years, everyone. I think that deserves a round of applause still.
No book already, yeah?
happily married, may I say. And yeah, just someone I really look up to. How's it going, Unks?
Hey, Rai. It's things are going well, and I'm really happy to be here with Dads Divulge. Life's good at the moment. I can't complain. Working from home, like everybody else, but no, it's all good. Thank you. Good.
Stu, what are you saying?
Good. Yeah, I'm all good. Everything is going well. So yeah, and this episode is whose job is it anyway? We're gonna dive in today with the roles of parenting and relationships, and over time there's been a shift in who should be doing what in the house, who should be doing what when it comes to parenting, and we're gonna go through a live example, but also just dive into things which impact why we act in a certain way, and learnings as well from those who have experienced it way earlier than us. But more importantly, guys, we'd like you to like, share, and subscribe our content. We've really enjoyed the response we've had, and we need the likes, we need the comments. Let us know what you want to hear about.
Definitely.
And take from there, really. So Uncle Rodney, talk to me.
Let's go.
What do you want to know?
Let's get into it. So, Unks, take us back to when you were growing up. Like, draw the picture for us of how it was for, as a young man watching your parents, and what was the kind of dynamics between your parents in regards to roles in the household? Okay,
so I suppose I should set the scene. Grew up in Peckham. We had a very, very humble terraced house. There's 4 of us in the house, four brothers and sisters. I have 2 older sisters, but when I was growing up, it was the 4 of us. And I am the second youngest, 2 boys, 2 girls. Now, in terms of the dynamics, so both mum and dad always worked all their life. Dad was a bus conductor. He went diligently to his work, never missed a day's work. Being a good West Indian, he didn't mind a little tipple on the weekends.
As you do.
And mum was this incredible energy, just ball of energy. Mum was a cook in an old people's home. That was her official job. And then she did about 3 other jobs. She was a seamstress at home. She was a cake maker at home. This woman never stopped. So in terms of the dynamics, my dad did his thing, but mum was the driver. She was the one who was always, I say she was born in a different era. Oh, my mum would have gone clear. She was always the one looking to further herself, how to push the family along. But if I reflect back, I often think if dad had listened to mum more, I think as a unit we would have got further. But so he did his thing, but he was still very much in that come from that era where I'm the man, the man's man. I do what needs to be done. I'll tell you what to do. All right, rightly or wrongly. But mum was absolutely the driver, the energy. She was the energy. That's how I describe it.
So it wasn't that, you know, they say the traditional kind of mum stays at home. All she does is cook, clean, wash, and dad goes out to work. She actually and it's quite different to how normal people would look at it. Like, people nowadays would think, oh, back in those days, she must have just been at home doing this. So she was very active, even back then.
That's an understatement, active. As I said, she had her official job, and she was always on the sewing machine, cooking. In fact, she was always doing 3 at the same time. You came in the kitchen, it was mayhem. She'd have a sewing machine there, and in between, you remember seeing it, right? She'd be cooking. She was just she was so industrious. That's the word. But it wasn't just physically about her physical work. She also had a good brain on her head. Again, a few examples of if dad had taken mum's advice, could we have been much better off? Absolutely. And the only reason I can see why he didn't was because of that. In that era, basically, you're just a woman, you just keep your mouth quiet, shh, right? I'm the man, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah. Do you feel like he was surrounded by other men who were similar?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, it was, if I have to think really hard to think of any of my, whether it was my uncles, certainly on my dad's side, or even anybody of his age, where I could look back and say that they did listen to their wife, and it was a more, let's say, 50-50 relationship. It was very much from that time, and we're talking about the 70s, where the man, even if a woman did work, the man was king of the castle, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And sometimes the detriment. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. And so if you fast forward now to maybe when you're a bit older, to where you're on the scene, you're potentially got some ideas in your head of what kind of wife you want for yourself in the future. Did how your own mother was in the house have an influence on that? Yes,
because I think one of the things, I think this was all subconsciously, what I was looking for was a strong woman. Because my mum was definitely that, and I would say my wife is 100% a strong woman, who is not afraid to speak her mind, but has that balance of being a wife, and also sometimes stepping up and being taking the lead, but without, if you like, minimizing my role or my voice.
Yeah.
And how important do you think that is?
I think it's absolutely critical for both parties. I think she would tell you it's funny, I work in finance, but in terms of our family finance, she used to just bring documents home and say, oh, I've been thinking about this, and I'd be half listening, say, signed it. I just signed it. Right? I just signed it. Right? Because I had absolute faith, trust and confidence in her judgment. Now, did she abuse that and not take my view into account on certain other things? No. So I think it's really critical that women have this balance. Now, it obviously, in order for them to be able to exact that balance, the man has to be willing to listen to them. All right. But from a woman's perspective, I think it's really critical that they have that balance of, yes, sometimes you can lead, and sometimes you do have to allow us to take that position.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I suppose something that you mentioned just now, you spoke about how your mum was in the house. One thing which I feel gets maybe misunderstood, and I've heard a lot of women say it anyway, is around men look for their mothers in women or in their partners, and they're looking for a mummy figure. I know that's not something I sign up to, but how could you explain this from your point of view about how you were seeking a strong woman but not a replacement for your mum? So I think that's sometimes the narrative. I don't know if you've heard. I've heard it certainly.
Of course, that's been said for years. But the point being is, what aspect of your mother you're looking to replicate. Because my mum was a great mum. Did she pamper me? No. So I'm not looking for somebody to come and wipe my nose, right? But the aspect of my mum that absolutely I was looking for, and I say this was on a subconscious level, is a strong woman. A woman that wasn't afraid to work if she has to work, and not afraid to say if she has to say something, but also a kind woman. So saying to somebody you shouldn't look for somebody of your mother's qualities is, in my mind, the wrong thing to say. It depends on what is it you're looking to take from your mother into your wife. If it's a case of your mummy spoils you and you expect your wife to do that, obviously that doesn't make a lot of sense. But certainly from my perspective, it was about looking for a strong woman that also had a great heart, and was very generous, and I found that in my wife.
Now, observing from, you got a son yourself, observing from how it is nowadays, what you can see from the outside, do you see women nowadays with a lot of those qualities that your mum had or that your wife has got currently? From what you can see.
Well, obviously times have changed, and with change, it's not always for the better. So, to try and answer your question, what has been better is that women have become more empowered, and it is becoming a fairer society. It's still not there, but a fairer society. So women can aspire to and acquire in different industries great roles, and that is something that didn't happen 30, 40 years ago on a very generic scale. But with that, let's just say, increase in power, as the advert says, comes responsibility. So to come back to your question regarding my son's generation, my observation is that you have a lot of young women who are doing great things in terms of they have financial independence and they have, great careers. But what in my opinion, is lacking is this empathy about being a good partner to their husband. And that sometimes doesn't mean sucking up to any man, not at all. But that means sometimes understanding their weaknesses. Women seem to be, a lot of the young women I observe, it is, what can you bring for me? If you're not bringing X, Y, Z, then boy, run along, right? Is there the feeling of let's build something together? A phrase that used to be around again when I was growing up is, they used to say women used to mold men, and that's true. That's true. But to mold something, it takes time and effort. I don't think generically that a lot of the younger women around today are prepared to mold a man for their benefit, not for his, for theirs as well.
Do you think there's a lack of patience there? Like, nowadays, not just women, but men in general, we want everything ready-made. We want it now. There's no, going back to you and the relationship with your wife now, I'm your nephew. I know the story. I know that you've been together for a very long time, and you've very much grown over the years together and built together and become very successful together.
Yeah.
But maybe some people who don't know you might look from the outside and think that's happened overnight. But what they don't see is the building from the actual start. Do you think women nowadays and men are willing to just say, see something in somebody and say, I'm going to stick with you. I got faith with you. We're going to build something together?
Again, generically, I think the answer is no. And as I was telling my kids the other day, I said, you're part of the instant generation. Everything has to be now. Everything. Simple example. I, as you well know, I used to have some banger motors, right? Like literally. And I used to think to myself, that's all right, because when I'm, 5 years down the line, I'll have the car of my dreams. Even 10 years down the line, maybe I was a bit too patient. Now I see young people who quite frankly haven't done anything, but they all feel that they need to be rolling in like the latest car, because everything has to be instant. It's an instant generation. So to go back to your question, do I think, and this goes for both men and women, do I think that they are prepared to put in the hard yards in order to gain something? I think the answer is no.
What do you think as well, when you know, we go back to your parents, do you think them coming from the kind of background they've come from, you know, coming from the Caribbean, coming from struggle really, kind of influenced, like, maybe them being together wasn't so much about love and, you know, I love you, and it was about surviving, it was about survival, and they knew together they're much stronger than being separate. I think nowadays it might be a thing where people are thinking, I don't need you because I can financially be okay without you. And
it was a journey for them, wasn't it?
It was a journey.
It was a journey.
Yeah, it was more of a we thing. Now it's more like an I thing. I'm independent. I don't need no man. I don't need, like, where do you think that's been lost?
I think that is an excellent point, and I think it's absolutely accurate. But again, I coin that phrase again. With power comes responsibility. So talking about our sisters, right? They have become more financially independent, which is a good thing. But just because you're financially independent doesn't, and you can stand on your own 2 feet by yourself, doesn't mean you should be by yourself, right? Doesn't mean that is better for you holistically. Now, you know, another common phrase that came about, I don't know, over the last 20, 30 years is women can have it all. No, they can't. Nobody has it all, right? Not man or woman. So you can be the most successful woman financially. You could be the CEO of God knows what, right? But I don't care who you are. If you haven't got somebody to come home to at night that is real with you. Now, not everybody wants kids, so let's leave that aside for the moment. But somebody that's real with you, then you are missing out on something.
You're lacking,
You are lacking something.
So much experience that could be had when you're in a relationship where you're building something together and you're moving in the right direction. You know, I do wonder actually if some of that behaviour is from the back of, you know, we've done an episode on, you know, it's like single parent families, and I wonder if, same example that you had, where you had, you know, your mum and your dad there, I wonder if they were raised in homes where they had an independent, strong woman there, and therefore believe wholeheartedly, I can replicate this. You know, I think we all sometimes strive to achieve what we see our parents doing. We try to do it, and I wonder if that's getting in the mix a bit, and then not knowing how to deal with a man doing some of those jobs.
And undoubtedly, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Stuart. This is not about women bashing. This is not about saying that women are doing you're wrong. It's about they are doing something, and there are legitimate reasons why they have got to this point, right? They have got to this point because of partially of what you said, single parents, which invariably a lot of the time means a mother. So you see a mother that has brought you up single-handedly sometimes, and she has been the mother and the father. So for a lot of young women, they can think to themselves, hang on, my mum did it, why can't I do it? Put on top of that, they've now moved into an era where opportunities for women are much greater. So if you are a young woman that is ambitious and you are prepared to hard work, you can now elevate yourself to a great status. And it's quite easy to see how they now get to a point of thinking, I don't need no man. Right? And, you know, when I have a little fun, I've got my little fun thing there, and that's all great. But the point being is that I have seen so many women in their mid-30s, in their 40s, right? On the surface, fantastic women, right? In terms of looks, in terms of brain power, in terms of wonderful people. Ridiculous number of them, all single. Ridiculous. And I look at it and I observe it and I think, wow, you're okay. Yes, I know men need to improve their stuff in lots of ways, but there just seems to be, it's always, not always, I want to say it's always, but there seems to be often a particular type of woman that seems to be single, and they are very driven, very well super well put together. And on the surface, you think, my God, that is a great catch. Why? But the question is, why are they? I see so many of them. I'm talking lots, and I don't think it's a unique experience that I've seen. Why are they by themselves? And I think part of the reason is some of the things we've touched on is they do feel that they can do everything by themselves. They do feel that maybe, why do I need a man in my life, right? But as I said, you can be a CEO of the most successful company in the world if you haven't got somebody to come home to. And again, about how do I help? I suppose I don't want to say mother a man. Help a man be a man. Let a man be a man. You know, as opposed to want to be the man and the woman.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your wife? So it's two questions. But like, has your wife come from the same type of family structure? So mother and father.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you feel that helped in terms of her seeing that dynamic and actually feeling that, you know what, I kind of understand what my role may be, should I find a suitable partner later on down the line?
I think definitely. So my wife is Nigerian. Nigerian culture is very much the man is the head of the household. Now, I say that, nobody ain't going to mess with my mother-in-law, right? So she is very much, even though she always gave her husband absolute respect, and he was the head of the household, but I don't know if the word head of the household is the appropriate, right? Or how I suppose I would how I phrase it is this. Let's say daddy was the president of the company. Sometimes I say I'm president of my family company, but the CEO, the one who runs it, like, you know, really makes a decision. I signed a paper, but the CEO, that's my wife. And that is how my mother-in-law, that's how her parents were. My father-in-law was the president, but the CEO, who actually on a day-to-day makes decisions about how things are, is my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Now they're both important roles, but you have to have, what I think is we have to allow the man to be the president. He has to step up the plate and be the president, and allow the woman to be the CEO. And it doesn't have to necessarily be that way. It can be the other way around, but I'm just talking about in my experience. Yeah. That's how it is played out.
Do you think as well, Unks, that, you know, maybe the job description of a provider, let's say, has changed over the years? Because I think back in the day, the provider was, from what I think, is someone you go out and you do what you can and bring home what you can. And whatever you bring home, you share it with your family and make sure they all eat and clothes are on their back. Nowadays, the description of provider is do that, but you know what we want from you? We want 4 holidays a year. we all want Gucci trainers for Christmas.
Yeah.
And we want Chanel handbag, and we all like, it's the checklist just keeps on growing. I think for providers, and it keeps on growing. And how realistic do you think that is for a man nowadays?
Okay, let me just go back in history a bit and then come up to date. So historically, because it was the man who had the job, he was always the provider. Okay, historically. So that's where it come from. And then we come into the era, moving up in time, where women start to work, but generally they are earning less than men, but they're doing their bit. We now, and we've already said, women have, you know, moved on eons in the last 20 years. Lots of families, women may be an equal provider or the major provider financially. So, and that's fine. The issue I think that you've touched on, which I think goes back to the women that I was speaking to, the question Stu raised earlier, is those women that are very well put together, they're ambitious, they've got great jobs. A lot of the time they're saying, if you want to come with me, you need to be maybe matching, but probably you have to bring in more to the plate. And sometimes that is putting an unrealistic and unfair pressure on the man. I've seen it where men are, their woman is doing this job, earning that, doing this, and like she don't want to go to Torremolinos on holiday, right? So if it is not Dubai or some other, really, she's not interested. Or I'll go Miami if I have to, but we went Miami last year, so next year we've got to be going somewhere else. Now again, this is all comes down to women having power. Are they being responsible with it? Right? Are they being responsible with it? What are they trying to build it? Are you trying to build a relationship, or you somebody that can just give you things, and is that an unrealistic pressure on him? There are questions I think we have to ask here that maybe our sisters won't like to hear the answers, but I think they need to be asked.
I think there's a generation of women coming up now that all of what you said is right. You've got those women who are high earners, and I've had friends that have even told me some of these high earning women have said, even though I'm a high earner, I'm not contributing. Like you're supposed to spend your money, and I'm supposed to keep my money. And I'm like, okay, how does that? So what is she going to be spending her money on then? You know what I'm saying? How does that work? I'm saying, but then you've got another generation coming up now. It's like the man is supposed to do this, and I'm just going to be at home, maybe in a bubble bath drinking champagne or something. I don't know. Like, but they're saying that they don't want to work, and they say, the most they might do is cook and clean, which I think is a cop out, really. I think too many people go back to this cook and clean thing, like, oh yeah, I'll just cook and clean if any. And I'm not saying it's an easy job, but I think if someone's looking for a wife, like, don't you want someone a bit more who could? Because anything you can pay for, how special is that? You know what I'm saying? You can have a high earning man in the city who can pay for someone to come to his house and cook and clean his house and not have, any worries. So how could you just say that's your role as a wife, you're just going to cook and clean? Is there not anything else?
It's realistic though, isn't it? Yeah.
What I would say is that, first of all, it's a very individual thing. There are going to be men out there who only want their wife to cook and clean, right? And if she wants to cook and clean, fantastic, knock your socks off, right? There is a next set of man who says, look, honey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to work. If we want to attain X, Y, Z, we're going to have to both, put our foot to the metal. And if we have kids, yeah, I'm going to do my piece too. Now, so that's a 50-50, right? And in my relationship, my wife has always worked, right? And I think she'll be the first that I've always done my bit at home. And that's how, for me, it should be. It should be, right? But if my wife was of the type said, look, I really don't want to work, but I will stay at home, I don't think I'd have had a problem with it. But obviously, how we move forward in terms of material gains, things would have taken longer. Right, it would have taken longer. Yeah. And if she's happy to accept that, then that's cool. If she's not, then we're going to have another conversation. So I think it's a very individual thing for couples. But the problem where I think it becomes a bigger issue is when what you're requesting is not making sense long term. So I don't want to work. I'm going to stay at home. I want you to work, but hey, I still want to go on the big holidays. I still want to move a house in a few years' time. Then it's like, it's diametrically opposed. It is not going to work. Now, has that increased over the last few years? Yes, it has. Yes, it definitely has. And again, I think it's part of the reason. Part of the reason is because of some of the topics, the points we've touched on earlier.
Yeah. So there's a stat that I've read, and it says, so there was a study, American study, over 6,000 people, married couples, were studied over 15 years to see how certain things in marriage affected their physical and mental health. And they studied guys who were the sole providers, and they said that the men, they said they felt the most anxious when they were the sole breadwinner in the family, and less stressed when their partners were contributing 40% to the household income. But they also said as women started to make more money past that point, men became increasingly uncomfortable and stressed. So there's a thing where it's like,
there's still that.
We want
there's
women
still
to contribute, but we don't want them to go past a certain level. Past a certain
You know
level.
what? I do know. I think there has to come down to a bit of maturity, though. I believe, for me anyway, there's got to be a maturity because, like you said, if there's a trajectory we're going on, I'm more than happy for all of us to be putting in, and that's because we're collectively trying to go into some direction. But it's like you said, some men probably don't want that, and they want to almost keep women in a certain position.
100%.
And that's where
You can't have your cake and eat it, basically.
Exactly. That's just like it's like a bit of a power.
Exactly.
And I wonder if that is where it's difficult because if you're a man who wants that, I think that's also fine. If I'm honest, everyone's got their different wants and needs. I don't think there needs to be a blanket. Men shouldn't want to 100%. Be that way. There's loads of different men out there.
I agree. I agree with that, Stu. That just the same way, it's not fair and right for a woman to say, "I'm not going to do nothing, but I want all this." Right? It's no. Doesn't make it any right for a man to say, "I want you to contribute, but here what." It's not 50-50 in terms of what we do with the money because I'm the man. I'm going to get the bigger say. No way. No way. But one thing I would like to say, there's a couple that I know, and they're more in my generation, and they are, I say, strangest. I've never come across something like this. So they both work. They have kids, and they've been together many, many years. And I think, I don't know exactly, but they're pretty even Stevens in terms of pay. But to say that they have taken it to another level, they don't do anything unless 50-50. And what I mean is, his work, he lost some overtime for a few months. They were meant to go on this big holiday because he couldn't bring his 50%. They didn't go. They didn't go.
I need to spat the drink out.
This is absolute. When they first told me, I said, you're joking. Then no, they're serious. And he felt it was okay, and so did she. And I'm like, you are kidding me, right? I mean,
so she could affront him the money then.
None of it. And
I'll pay you back when we come back. Don't worry.
They've been together decades, and I can't say hand on heart that they're happy about it, but that's how they live. Didn't want to buy. They delayed buying a dining suite by God knows how because one of them could bring 50%. I'm like, wow. That's not for me, but.
Proper even Stevens then,
yeah.
As I said, they took it to a new science, to a new level.
Everything.
Now, if it works for them, that's fine.
Yeah. How do you manage the message then? So, if one, let's be honest. So, if the man has an idea about where they want the family to go, or maybe a new house, or actually things you want to go and do, how do you manage the message if you feel there's tendencies that actually someone's going to feel like you're telling them what to do? Because I think that is part of it as well. I think sometimes we all know delivery is everything, right? Sometimes the content can be gold, but delivery is everything, right? But I suppose there is something around trying to, and I think we could all do better at it, about trying to get buy-in. And I think it's sometimes misunderstood as, oh, you need to speak to the real boss who does the real signing off. But I think there is something about just being mature and actually saying, I'm trying to get buy-in from my wife for a direction we're trying to go in. How do you manage that if you can drop someone?
Okay, so in my example, I've always earned much more than my wife. But there is no way I would not say it was 50-50. And I would say that in terms of what we've attained, she has been arguably the bigger driver in doing that. So that's for me. But to answer your question, Stu, I think let's just give a real life example. So you are living in a 2-bedroom property and you want to go to a 4-bedroom property. You've got 2.2 kids, right? So something like that, I think it's very objective. Okay, our house is worth 250. In order for us to get this 450 house, we're going to have to raise a deposit of 75 grand. Okay, now I earn this a year, and every month I can save 1,000. But if we reduce the scale of the holiday and cut back on this, I could maybe raise it to 1,700, which means that I can do that in a much shorter time frame. What do you think, babe? So what you're doing is you're putting down facts.
Yes.
This is, but I'm not saying, and then you put it over to her. What do you think? Because it's either going to take us 4 years, or it's going to take us. We could do it in 2 years. Where are you happy? And if she says, "Oh, okay, 4 years is a bit long. Maybe we'll do it in 3." Okay, in order to do 3, we'll have to reduce here and there. You have to have buy-in. You have to have buy-in. And I think as opposed to telling, it's laying out the story and saying, "What do you think? What do you think? Tell me what you think. How do you think we can do that?" Because sometimes, sorry, right?
No, go ahead.
Right, I was gonna say sometimes either man or woman, they want something, but in order to get there, you go, "Well, this is the road," and they go, "Yeah, but I don't want to do that road." I'm like, "Okay, then how do you think we're going to get there?" Then I'm all ears, and just using that as an example. If they say, "No, I don't want to wait 2 years." Okay, so give me your suggestion, right? And put the ball in their court, because what we're trying to do here is it's a partnership. It's not a dictatorship.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know that it is a partnership, and that's where acknowledging and appreciating man and woman for how we are is important.
Yeah.
This is why we work together, not when we're working against each other. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
not a battle.
It's not a battle. You need the man for his more logical way of thinking, and you need the woman for her kind of, her feelings and how she looks at certain things and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I feel we need to understand this. It has to be a we thing. There's a lot of things being pushed out there saying, making men and women feel like we don't need each other. As long as you've got some money in your back pocket, you don't need no one. And it's not that.
Again, I will use my wife as a good example. We have discussions on this very topic. And she's a very intelligent woman, very strong. She would say in her mind, and I'm not putting words in her mouth, but this is what conversations we've had, that she sees women have generically, not obviously everybody, they've lost their way. Right? I see in the city, I have seen, certainly not so much now, but certainly previously, women who came in the city were no more than men who could have babies. They acted just like men, and in my opinion, they did themselves a disservice. They had an opportunity when they got in there. I understand some of the initial reasons, but then when we became more established, their actual strong point was being a woman, not trying to be a man who just happens to could have a baby, right? Yep. So to reinforce the point you made, Ryan, the strengths women have in terms of their emotional higher intelligence than us is by much more a strong point than a weakness. And sometimes I think women what they've tried to do is that they've almost adopted male-like roles, tried mannerisms. Yeah. And let me tell you something. At the same time, though, they want a man to be a man. So hang on, you want to act like a man, but then when you're acting like a man, you want me to be, let's just say more feminine. But then they flip the coin, and the next minute go, but you need to act like a man. No, why don't you just act like a woman? And that doesn't mean you be subservient. That means you be who you are and let me be who I am. And you know what? When we work together, a bit of me will rub off on you, and a bit of you will rub off on me. I'll become more feminine in my thought process. You become more manly, but don't adopt it from the onset. Yep. Just because you got money, just because you got a big job, you're still a woman, right?
I think that's a really, really valuable point. Yeah.
I was going to say in terms of parenting now, I believe that the motherly instinct, I feel, comes quite naturally to most. I'll say most women, not all. How have you, over the years, tried to encompass some of those things so that you're actually doing your your share? You know, because we speak a lot about, we speak a lot about women bringing things to the table. I do believe actually we as men should also bring something to the table as well. And it's not just the money, not just being a provider, right? So, you know, what qualities over time have you, or if anything, which quality did you most have difficulty adopting?
See, my mum, I have 6 sisters, right? I have been surrounded by women all my life. And quite frankly, I would prefer to be in a room with 100 women than 100 men. Purely for conversational purposes, by the way, right? For conversational purposes. I find women far more interesting, intriguing, enlightening, right? Than men. That's me. So because of that, from a very young age, I observed women, and I sort of understood. I'll never claim to understand the way a woman thinks, but let's just say I got an insight into the way women think. And that gave me great empathy, right, for them. So even if I have 2 daughters, and if you would ask them if they have something difficult to ask or to say, who would they say it to first? And I think they would both say, I would say it to Dad initially, because they say Dad can be more sympathetic, right? Now that's at the initial stage. So the point being is that for me, I have a great empathy for women, and I love them, right? I love them. I love the way they think. As I said, I don't always understand it, but I enjoy being around them. So that gives me an opportunity to you adopt things that they do. So if I think for anything that if you admire something, anything, a part of you will try to emulate it. So there are bits that come more natural to me, and there's bits that are not as natural to me. But then I think, okay, sometimes I do stop and think to myself, oh, what would my wife do in this instance? How would she? Because my initial reaction as a man may not be the best one, right? Or may not be the right one. So I stop and think, okay, how would my wife deal with it? And for a moment, I think, oh, she would do this. And invariably, it's a better way of dealing with things.
Do you know what? That's a good point. And what I was going to say was that, you know, you've been married successfully for 31 years, which is a massive achievement. And in that time, just like you said, you try to understand the point of view from your wife's point of view, and try to understand how she may be thinking and whatnot in certain things. And I know that must happen, you know, with your wife. That must be reciprocated by your wife as well. But do you think in general, women actually try to understand where men are coming from? There's this idea pushed out there. It always seems to be try and understand your woman. Try and buy this book that's written on how to understand women. But, you know, listen to this song. This song will give you the secret on how to understand women. And
I'll respond to that. I think that there's three parts to my answer to that. First, I will say up front, I think women need to listen harder, make a bigger effort. 2, I will say that's hard for them because men generically don't talk as much as women. Okay. So we can't expect them to read our minds. We have to talk more, but for a multitude of reasons, communication in men versus women is very poor. So I think we have to make a little bit of effort, but also they have to make an effort to listen harder. But I also think there's a third part to it, and you touched on it a little bit when you said women more complex. Women are more complex, and therefore men are simpler. Sometimes I think women believe we are much simpler than we are. So what I mean, if I was to put it in, they think that we've got 3 points, A, B, C. That's it. We can only have 3 points. And if she's of the belief that I have covered his A, B, C, I ain't got nothing more to listen to. Well, hear what? He might have an E, even a D and an F, right? So yes, we are simple creatures, but don't assume we are simpler than we are, because you know what? Even men can surprise you now and again in having a side of them that you didn't expect them to have. Yeah. But you're only going to find out if you listen.
And maybe there's women out there that don't even know, where to start in regards to trying to understand their man, their boyfriend, their husband, whatever it is. What pointers would you give any women listening to this?
Okay, so I'm going to start on the proviso that he is when I say a decent man, a man that wants his woman to understand him, wants to be listened to, right, and wants to increase his communication skills. So that being the starting point, I think it's really down to the fact that don't make too many assumptions. In fact, try not to make any assumptions, because we are seen as the simpler creature, so to speak. You think that it's either left or right. No. And just because he's gone left doesn't mean that the next turning has to be right. So it's a bit of patience. It's really all the old things that we say what makes a relationship. It is patience. It is forgiveness. It is communication. And if the man in the relationship, let's just say, is not the talker, that doesn't mean you talk for him. That means you find a way to try and encourage him to talk. Because what I've seen sometimes is that where you have, let's say, the man is the quieter one. He talks 10. She's talking 90. Now, at no point is she trying to say, okay, even though I'm the more talker, let's try and bring you to 20, right? And I'll reduce to 80. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So those are some of the things that I think women, certainly on the offset, can help in trying to improve or listen to their man and trying to get him to communicate more.
Honestly, I think it's important. I don't want to get too dark, but there's a statistic that I saw today, which was basically the suicide rate for men, which is 77% of men over women commit suicide. They're mostly middle-aged. Yeah. And a heavy part of that reason is for them feeling like they can't talk to anyone, or they're not being heard. And another major part to that was also coming back to roles and stuff, which was they felt a lack of identity. They felt like with women earning more than them in the marketplace nowadays, they felt that there was no use for them. They without them earning a certain amount of money, they felt like they were useless.
That's it. Sorry, Stu, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, there is mounting pressure though. I think any man, we're all fathers here. There are pressures that we've got in the back of our mind, and again, if we're not communicating that between our peers or with our wives, I think for some men it can feel crushing. You're thinking about money, you're thinking about the children, you think about the children that you've got, you're thinking about a child that's on the way, and when you talked about it being quite simple ABC. I think women sometimes see that as we're looking at it very functionally. Don't get me wrong, we do have to sometimes. You do have to be very rational and very functional. Like you gave the example about the house, purchasing a new house, for example. But there's more grey area there. You are thinking about, okay, this child grows up, relationship. Am I even good enough in the relationship, kind of thing? She, loved the pants off me before. Am I still doing it for her? That's a real pressure, and on top of the money, on top of appearance, on top of all of those things, and I think I'm not surprised by that stat. It's a sad stat, and it's sad that actually, men can't talk between themselves without it being, the kind of, there's a time for a certain type of conversation, man talk, barber talk, whatever you want to call it, right? But there has to be some kind of more serious conversation. Over the years, I know definitely with Ryan, I've had many a time, try to seek someone who can, I'm not the best at articulating at times, but somehow grasped, right, I know what he's going through, I understand what's happening. So,
and this is partly why we started this platform.
Exactly.
To talk about these things.
It's interesting because you made a point earlier, Ryan, that there are a plethora of information packages out there on some of the things women go through. Women go through menopause. We can never understand the physicality of what they go through, right? We can never. But the mere fact that there's so much information out there, right, gives you an insight may only be a small, but an insight into some of the things that they go through. And of course, the fact that women, again, are much better communicators allows us, those of us who want to take that information, at least allows that. With men, again, something that you mentioned earlier, with men not understanding, or let's say not understanding, men's role in society is now become blurred. Now, if you lose your job as a man, I can really understand, even though your job is not everything about you, but it's almost like a central point.
Yeah.
It's like it's your north. Because if I know where north is, I can go with south, east, or west. But if I don't know where north is, I have no idea, right? If I haven't got a job, right, first of all, I can't, as you say, Stu, we're providers. We're functional. I can't provide for my family the way I can. And then even if you've got, in a lot of instances, you've got your wives who can help out and who are trying to emotionally bring you up, you start thinking, well, what kind of man am I? That's what goes through your head. What kind of man am I? All right. And then you start all of a sudden your self-worth just keeps ticking down and down and down and down and down. And the fact is of the matter, for a lot of men, they're going through these thought processes, no outlet. And then all it is you and your dark thoughts spiraling down. And as you get darker, communication becomes harder. And it's just an inverse relationship. The more, I don't use the word depressed, but the darker your thought, the harder it is to talk about it. And eventually it leads to the statistics that you said.
Yeah, you're right, Unks. And it's like, we were talking about checklists before. And I just think as the checklist keeps on getting bigger as to what a man should be, how you prove your worth as a man. Because going back, as we said, being a provider back in the day was simple. You go get a job where you can get it. You bring the money home, and that's it. Now it's not as simple as that.
Whatever you bring is all right. Whatever you bring is all right.
It's acceptable. Now it's not acceptable. If you're not, you can have a job, but you need to be earning above a certain amount. There's this term going around now, high value man, which is if you're not earning 100 grand, if you're not earning 100 grand a year, which is that's a big wage. That's a big. If you're not earning at least 100 grand a year, you're not classed as a high value man. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the list keeps on getting bigger. If you can't pay for your wife to go on holiday, you're not classed. If you can't buy her the latest Chanel bag, you're not a man. If you can't do all these things, and as a man, it must just keep on, like, the pressure on you must just keep on building for you to kind of keep up with what a man should be. I was looking at another stat today which says the average wage for a five member family, or average cost of living for a 5-person family, is something like 70k. Yeah,
wow,
70k. So. And that's not including holidays or any extracurricular activities. Essentials. That's just essentials. So by the time you add on the extras, we're looking at probably at least 100k.
100, yeah.
So you're telling me that for me to be the ultimate breadwinner, I have to be earning 100k, and that's when I'm classed as a man. And it's unattainable for some people.
And let's not forget, you've got to be able to do all the DIY in the house.
Yeah,
you've got to be able to do all of these things, they say. It's just not. It's weird. Yeah.
But for both sexes, that's where I'm going to use the phrase. You got to check who you're really checking for, right? So, as a man, yes, you want. And I look at my mum. My mum stood by my dad's side, but she was always saying, Harold, let's see if we can do this. She was ambitious. She wasn't putting a pressure on him that, boy, if you don't do it, guess what's going to happen, right? So what I'm saying is that there are some of us men who do need encouragement, right? Who do need to be pushed, right? But and there's others of us that are busting our ass who what we need is for a woman to tell us, listen, honey, it's all right. Don't kill yourself. Right? Yeah. There's more to life than X, Y, Z. So it's not one response for everything, but what I'm saying is that you need to check who you're checking, right? Yeah. And just because she's got the prettiest face, don't mean she's right for you. And likewise, I would say to our sisters, you know what? If you want a provider, i.e. somebody to just give you things, I think they call them sugar daddies. right?
Yeah.
Right? Fine. But like there's no disputing that it's not a love thing, it's a business transaction. That's essentially what you're saying. And it's so funny, right? I saw this, I don't know what it was, on one of them YouTube things. There was literally like 2 days ago, a young couple, like in their 20s, and they're going to a counselor to try, because they're at the point of breaking point. And one of the couples, this girl was 24, 25. She said that, my dad always provided everything. So that's how I grew up. Okay. The brother she was with, he was 27 and he was doing good things. And he said to her, but he has come to the point. He said, look, I bought you the Chanel. I've taken holidays. Because I now want to plan, i.e. I want to buy a house. I'm saying we need to relax on those kind of things. She weren't having it. She said, listen, yes, we need to get the house, but you still need to maintain. He said, but that's not feasible, right? Yeah. That's not feasible. Yeah. But she wasn't having it. No, I have to have my things. I have to have it. Now,
it's crazy.
Something like that, I'll just tell him, and he did. I was shouting it through the TV. He understood. I said, just leave her about her business. He did, right? But to be serious, women like that, you got to check yourself, honey, because I would put money on it. You look at this girl in 10 years' time, she ain't gonna be with nobody. She ain't gonna be with nobody, right? And let's make no bones about it. She's 24 today, 34, big difference. She may still look great, but she ain't gonna be having the pulling power that she has at 24. And that's another thing women need to figure out, right? You even when you do have equality in terms of what opportunities you have in life, in terms of career and so on and so forth, we're not equal. We're not the same, because men don't have a biological clock like women. It's a fact. I'm not saying you don't like it or hate it. It's a fact.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And because of that, you have a different set of criteria to us. Right, a different, and what I'm saying, even if you think you want to act like a man, right? You can drink like a man, you can bitch like a man, drink like a man. You ain't a man, because you are still going to have that biological clock. I'm not. Well, I'm not for a lot longer. Let's put it like that. And sometimes these are things that women need to acknowledge, not just here. They need to acknowledge it.
And I think we touched on it earlier about having the right type of peers around you, and I do wonder, actually, there needs to be the whole thing of I'm a certain way and all my friends are a certain way, and not actually maybe recognizing that we're all in the same position here, not actually learning anything different. The conversation's the same, all five of us all going through the same thing. So therefore, sometimes I don't blame them for not knowing any different, because actually it's what they're seeing. But you need to sometimes see, if you're trying to, I feel like if you're trying to get different, you've got to do different, you know, and you can't, go on.
If you're trying to be successful in anything, you need to talk to the people that have done it. You need to talk to if you're telling me that you've spoken to a woman and she's told you, yeah, this is the way, and she's been married happily for 25, 30 years, whatever it is, and she's telling you this is the way to go about it, I doubt it very much. You know what I'm saying? I doubt it very much. I don't know if a woman's being honest with you, if she's telling you the truth on how her relationship is or has been. I doubt she would go about it saying, you know what, you need to be successfully married for this long with someone, you need to get everything you can get and get out the door. Like, it's not
exactly.
It wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be that advice.
It's interesting, right, Stu? To your very good point you made. You said about who you surround yourself with. That example. If we were to say, kids, we say to kids, don't hang around with bad people because they influence you. That fact is true throughout life. And just because the people you hang around with may not be criminals or horrible people, that doesn't mean that they're doing things that are conducive to moving your life forward.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
I mentioned it earlier when I saw this bunch of women. There's about 5 or 6 of them. They could have been Stepford wives. They all the same, all high powered, all look good, all this, all that, and all had nothing, right? And all of them had no man for years. And I'm thinking, that's when understood that fact, I'm like, what? It really hit me between the eyes. I'm like, you look at any one of them and you think, great catch, right?
Yeah.
You know, great catch. There's got to be, but I don't know if any of them have looked at themselves individually or collectively and said, okay, something's not right here. And it's not just because the man is whatless, right? It's not just because, you know, we're talking years, not like one or two, multiple, you know, double digits. Some of them ain't had serious man. Women got to look at themselves.
Why do you think that is, though? What with those women that you're talking about, why do you think that is? And do they actually want men? Do you actually know that they actually are seeking a relationship with a man?
So I think all of them want a man, right? But the answer why it is because I don't think that they're willing to accept some of the things that we've talked about. Some of the things that it isn't. They're not men. They are women who have done extremely well. And they have, in a lot of respects, as I said, I think that the very thing that makes women phenomenal, they have, I would say lost, but they've minimized it. And so are they then appealing to men? Well, it goes back to my biological thing. These women are now 40. Yeah, man who's maybe 55, 60 is saying, okay, honey, I'll take a little punt on you because guess what? He's had his kids.
Yeah,
right.
He's been married. He's done the whole. Yeah,
he's done his thing, right? And you know, he may be a stage of life. Yeah, he may not even be looking for marriage, but he's saying, "I have a relationship with you." It's a different dynamic. Are they ready to go for a man who's maybe 15 years older? No, because in their mind's eye, they're still hot stuff, which physically they may be, but they may know difference. A man who is in his 40 ain't looking for a 40-year-old woman. He's looking for a woman that's 30. And again, women may not like that. They may not agree with it, but it's a fact. It's a fact.
Yeah.
So do you think these women are almost giving off like a air, like without even knowing, kind of just an air saying they're not, you know, you talk about energy and stuff, people can, before they even approach you, they can just feel there's something there that, not you, as good as you might look, there's something there that is, it's not for me. Do you think that's the point?
Yeah.
Ryan, these women I was observing, I weren't looking for nothing, and I said if I was, I wouldn't have gone in that direction. And it's nothing to do with how they physically looked. As you said, they give off of vibes.
Yeah.
And again, do they acknowledge this? Do they believe it? Probably not. So could they just continue giving it off? And
I feel like if they are told that, they would single it out as you are the anomaly, right? And you don't know what you're talking about. You know, and that's the thing. I think. For me, I've certainly been able to notice if someone can adapt or not. And that's the thing. You can have these qualities, but are they qualities that make you attractive to someone who's serious, who wants to take on as a partner? Probably not. You know, if someone is serious and wants to take on as a partner, you want someone who can adapt. You want someone who can, we're not saying we want to control and change you, but some of the things that we spoke about, this entire podcast is around, you know, trying to walk together in the same direction.
It's trying
to feed with one another. It's definitely one of those things, and I just don't know if some of those behaviours help.
I totally agree, but the thing is, what's the expression my mother-in-law is like? Men's pants has been out there, right? In terms of where we need to improve, right? Everybody and their mother knows. Oh, men have done this, that, and I'm not disputing any of that. I don't think. Because over the last 20, 30 years, it's essentially been about empowering women, essentially giving fairness to women, essentially making women equal. No dispute, right? No dispute. But again, just
there has to be some kind of accountability in it as well.
There's accountability. Women have started to mess up, but you don't hear that. You don't hear that. And the fact is, even though you don't hear people talk about it, what we've talked about here in that there is now a huge swathe of women from all cultures who you think, how is it all these women are single, right? I mean, and again, I'm talking for years and years. I have so many examples, right? I could give from all cultures where they're single, and they all have, in my opinion, they have this sort of vein running through them, this trait of, I don't need a man. If I get a man, some of them is he has to be this. Some of this, you know, I want a man up here, but I'm down there. How's that going to work?
And there's also a movement of, this is where I think the problem is coming in, because there's also a big group of men that are just not standing for certain things anymore, and they're moving further over there, and the women are moving further over the other side, and it's like, when are we going to come back into the middle, kind of thing?
Look,
again,
how do we get back?
Struggle.
Let's deal with the facts, right? Let's deal with the facts. The fact is that there are more women available than men.
Yeah.
So, if you like, men are the buyers. I'm not telling any woman. I would never tell any woman, friend, sister, daughter, take any rubbish. But what I would say is, check yourself. Check yourself. What are the vibes you're giving off? Going back to that, what are you bringing to the plate? You know, you're saying you want a man up here. Are you up there? I'm not talking in terms of you want a man who earns 50 grand. You have to earn 50 grand. I'm saying, but what are you bringing to the plate that you can say this is your share? This is your share.
You know what? Can you elaborate on what you mean by what you bring to the plate? Because I don't want to keep on going on about this housewife thing, but I think there's women out there that actually feel, and for me, there's nothing wrong with a housewife. I think, as you said,
absolutely,
some people it works for. You know, if it works for you, that's fine. But can you let women know that a housewife is not just a housewife? It's not just it's not just a job. You don't get paid a salary for cooking and cleaning or whatever. Can you explain? You know, if you had a housewife, maybe if your wife played that role, what else would you need from her? I'm sure it wouldn't be just cooking and cleaning. You would need something emotionally from her.
Right. Listen. So, I suppose there's many ways you can split up a relationship. There are the practical things, right, and then there is the emotional things, right. The practical things is we need money in order to pay rent, pay a mortgage. So you, Mr. Man in this instance, you go out and do that practical thing. Great. You, woman, wife, what I need you to do, I need you to run the house, right? So I pay for it, but I need you to run it. Running it means dealing with all aspects of it. All aspects of it. Cleaning, cooking, right? And then guess what? So that's her practical side, that's his practical side. But that's not what makes a relationship, right? You could do that with what do you call it? Flat share. A flat share can do that, but that's not a relationship. What makes a relationship is the emotional side. When you come home at night, you want somebody to say, sweetheart, what have you been doing? Right? How's work been? And she wants you to say, tell me what's been going on in the house because it looks fantastic. It looks great. Right? That is the emotional stability, the emotional concrete that a relationship needs. But there are the practical sides that need to be taken care of, and whether it's as I described or the other way around or or a mixture of that, it doesn't matter. But what has to happen is that there has to be the emotional side of it, where both parties show an acknowledgement of what the other's doing, right?
Yeah, worth. Yeah,
it has to be, and it can't be a case of a man saying, "Look, I've worked for the last 10 hours. All you did was this. All you do is that." Right, denigrating what she's doing, or flip side, a woman saying, "Boy, I know you work 10 hours, but I still need that Gucci bag." Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, there has to be a fairness to it from both parties.
Yeah, I think you put it right. It's about the acknowledgement of what your role is. You know, I think Ryan, we spoke about this about mat leave. You know, and the fact that my opinion is that actually men somewhat have it a tiny bit harder, not in terms of holding the child for 9 months and looking after the child all day, every day, but in fact, I think we enter the new world quicker with kids. So, for example, we're working, partner's pregnant, child's here. Within 2 weeks, you're back to work and have got a child at home. So as much as the woman doesn't go back to work until 9 months, a year, 2 years later, quite quickly we have got it thrown. You know, it's almost hits us like a train. Right? You're back in the workplace. You've got a child at home. You know instantly, child cries all night. You've still got to go work in the morning.
Deal with it.
Doesn't matter.
Just deal with it.
And I think,
we're not taking away. We're not taking away from anything that a woman does.
No,
but it's the reality.
I agree.
It's a reality, and I feel like that bit is not even it's not touched on. And
Agreed.
What helps though is your wife or partner understanding. Do you know what? It's pretty tough. You're up all night doing the feed or whatever, and then you're going to work in the morning. But equally, we've got to come home and realise it's a tough gig.
Yeah,
been on the sofa all day.
Still a full-time job.
It's a tough gig. And I think when you're seeking a partner, you need to realise. Well, not seeking a partner. You need to realise if you're going to go down the road of trying to be with someone, these are the things which they're going to come down the road. Not the thing to do with money, not the thing to do with holidays, not the thing to do with fashion. Those are, like you said, they're functional things. These are the real emotional things that glue.
But you'd be surprised I feel like when some of these women do have a child and they start going through these things and they realise that, hold on, there's no amount of money that could, make it easier for me right now. They start to realise, well, having someone here just to actually help me out, just to go and get a bottle from downstairs, would actually be quite good at the moment. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that's gold dust. That's gold dust.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, I think the point being, what we're touching on is that it always going to take efforts from both sides. But again, I will maintain, I think the weaknesses of men has been highlighted, and somewhat appropriately so. And I think men have moved on. I mean, if I think of what my dad did versus what I did, right, night and day. And that's not me knocking my dad. That's just what men did back then, right? And I see from what I did to what I see the newer fathers doing, a step on, right? So I think men are improving, and I think what we're saying here is that women, thank God, have always been good mothers, good providers of emotional stability. What we're talking about here is, recently has that stability, where they give it to the children, is it being shared with their partners? And for some of the reasons we've touched on, and I think that's the point, is that women have to, quite frankly, look at themselves more. They have to look at themselves more.
I think you made a good point. I think men, I would agree, probably more than ever, are working on themselves. And I think because we've realised we haven't got a choice. It's not like we can't. A lot of us realise we can't sit down and hope for something to change. I think that's just a male mentality anyway. If we want something, we know no one's coming to save us. We have to go and do it ourselves. And I think men are making constant improvements. I think we're still trying to shake off that tag put on us from maybe other men who haven't been around or been doing their job, and we've kind of been cast with this kind of thing, like all men are this kind of
paint with the same brush.
Paint with the same brush. That's it. And even I spoke to you about this, Uncle Rose, before as well. Like, I've been out with my wife, and more than one occasion, someone said like, "Oh, I don't know how you do it with the 4 kids," and I'm standing there and I'm thinking, I didn't know she was a single mum. I'm thinking in my head, am I not here? Hello, should I take off my should I take off my invisible cloak? And it's even as a man, these people know that we're in a relationship, we're married and whatnot. Even in that position, it's like we're still overlooked. You're still not doing enough, even though I'm here, I'm a full-time dad, but I'm still not getting looked at by certain people like I'm doing my job. I know it's not malicious. I know they're not doing it to be bad mind or whatever it is, but it's just funny that people still look at things like that.
Because they cast all men to behave in exactly the same format, and that's the issue we have, right? Is that they're seeing us all as one, when obviously we're not, thank God.
No, it's true. Definitely. It's true. But yes, you know what, Unks? Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing the wisdom, man. I think a lot of men are going to value this. A lot of women are going to value this. And to be honest, it's come from someone, it couldn't come from anyone better, to be honest with you. I look at, the credentials are there. You got the CV. I'm saying, it's not coming You know, and I think it's refreshing coming from a man that hasn't got an axe to grind, that isn't bitter with women, who is happily married for 31 years, has shown that it can work. You know what I'm saying? With some work, it can work. And, you know, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Listen, all I can say, it's been my pleasure. I think what you and Stu are doing is phenomenal. Keep it up. And
thank you.
You know what? It's all I would say in closing is that for me, both parties have to do their part. They have to do their part. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that man has to do more, women has to do more. Both have to do their part. They can be different, but they both have to do their part. And all I'm saying is that I think, sisters, just listen a little harder.
Yeah, okay, definitely. Well, guys, that was another episode of Dads Divulge. Thank you for your time. Keep tuned in. And as always, like, share, and subscribe on your favorite platforms. Until another time.
Guys, let us know what you want us to talk about. Comment below. Let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
Let us know what you want us to get into.
That's it.
All right, thanks, guys. Until next time, we're out.
What you